I will call the meeting of the Energy Environment Committee to order. Will the secretary please call the roll call?
Roberta Brianca.
Yes, here.
Ellen Reed.
Here.
Joe Lamartina present. Julia Tyson is out. Bill Riley. Here. Patrick Reynolds. Here. Alex Ramirez is out. Jenny Ouellette has resigned. And Glenn Stevens is out. You do have a quorum.
Thank you so much. As was just mentioned by the secretary, we had a resignation from Jenny Ouellette, and we have a new member who has not yet joined us. Glenn, what was his name?
Glenn Stevens.
Glenn Stevens. Is he from Newmarket obviously, but like a different committee or?
No, he was just a new resident that wanted to get involved.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay, so before we begin, we open up to public comments. So if anyone from the public would like to comment, you're welcome to come forward, state your name and address. Seeing none, we have 2 sets of minutes to adopt because we did not have a quorum last time. So do I have a motion for November 29th?
I'll make a motion to approve the Energy and Environment meeting minutes from November 29th, 2023.
Thank you. And a second? Seconded by Bill Riley. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Get really close. So this is just a quick little agenda. First, we'll talk about what is the master plan, what does it mean, what does it not mean. I'll introduce you to the subcommittee members of the entire master plan project and the list of chapters that will be going into this update. And then the kind of approach that we're taking with the different master plan teams. And then we'll talk about your proposal document. And then, that's a sample arts and culture chapters, it should say energy, I apologize. And then we'll discuss a little bit.
It seems you've been doing this with others.
Yes, yes. So what is the master plan? Ultimately, the document should be thought of as the town's vision. It should be built from the ground up from the members of the community. It's a living document. Typically, we plan on a 5 to 10 year planning horizon, but there's always opportunity for review annually and updating the document as new data becomes available. It's a guide for the community's growth and also for capital investments. So it's really useful, particularly when you're applying to different grant or other funding sources. But you shouldn't think of the plan itself as a regulatory document. It is not a regulation. It's not static, like I said. You should think of it as a living document. And the plan itself is not funding, but it can support applications for funding in the future. And it is certainly not a burden. It is supposed to support the community and help you grow. So, sorry, the formatting on this got a little funky. But these are the master plan subcommittee members. So this is sort of the team that is driving the development and the direction of all of the different chapters and liaising with other town boards and staff. So we have a couple of members from the Conservation Commission, Sam and Ellen, a couple from the Planning Board, Jane, Val, and Eric. We have some residents, Michaela, Sylvia, and Mike, and Michaela and Sylvia are actually planners by trade as well. And then we have a member from the CIP committee, Phil. And I'll just say that if any of you would like to attend these meetings, you're absolutely welcome to. If you'd like to appoint a representative to the subcommittee, that's totally welcome. I'll have my contact information and my colleagues' contact information at the end. Angie, who is helping to lead this subcommittee. So this is the rundown of chapters we've currently outlined for updating, and some of them are actually new, like the energy chapter. Right now, we have started in on the housing chapter, the vision chapter, land and water conservation, which encompasses your existing water resources chapter, as well as an open space plan update. The energy chapter we're getting started tonight. Arts, culture, and historic resources just started with the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Commission. And then community facilities and utilities is also starting this month. And then later next month, we'll start in on the recreation chapter. And of course, there's still several there on that list to go. And this project overall runs through early summer of next year. So we're in the long haul. And then I'll also just mention, as you may have seen, we just closed out a survey, and that relates mostly to vision, housing, land, and water conservation chapters. We got 415 responses, which is a really great response rate. And then we're also planning a workshop for those chapters to come March 16th. And so these are some community engagement activities that we have going on for the existing chapters, but there will be opportunity for this group to have input on different community engagement activities in the future. Another survey to come and more workshops. So this is sort of the approach, and you have a sheet there in front of you that kind of lays this out and also lists the different chapters that are involved in this team. So I'll try to explain this as best I can. Branching out from the subcommittee, we have members of the subcommittee assigned to these 4 different master plan teams. You have a list of one of the teams in front of you, which includes the community facilities and utilities, energy and transportation chapters. And then you can see the team 4 members there. Lindsay is the representative to this group right now. And there are also 3 other teams, one being the Conservation Commission is working as a team on the open space plan. And so you all have representatives from the subcommittee to kind of liaise back and forth. So for this chapter, it made the most sense to include you all as sort of part of that team and to lead the development of this chapter, because your work directly translates to the chapter. And like I said, it's kind of a similar approach that the Conservation Commission is taking, and also the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Commission. So this is a sample outline of how some of those groups are moving forward with their approach to update their chapters. And you'll see towards the end the kind of homework that I've laid out for us all to prepare for the next meeting and get us set up to identify solid foundation, baseline conditions, and identifying who we might want to bring in locally, regionally, or from the state to kind of support building out that initial data collection and information gathering. So I did want to talk a little bit about the document that you put together. I have taken a look at it. I'm curious if you could let me know the date that you all drafted this. I didn't know this one
It had started quite some time ago, but the final, maybe 3 months ago, we finally voted to send it along.
So the great thing about this document and what I so appreciate is that you've all put together a vision. It has a really great start on some concrete actions and recommendations. And I know that you all have been tasked with an energy transition plan as well. So what we'll want to think about moving forward with this document is what best fits into that and what best fits as a sort of summary in the master plan that's very forward facing and that residents will easily understand and digest.
I have a question, just to be clear. One of the things that we thought was going to happen is there was sections in there of current energy usage, which means somebody was going to have to go out and get a bunch of information from wherever. Is that still the plan, that Stratford Regional is going to go get that information, i.e. the amount of electricity that's being used by the municipality, by the schools?
Yeah, so we will use all of the data that is available to us and that we can collect. And, I haven't done all of my background research yet. That's kind of the phase that we're entering for this chapter. So I'll have to see what is available to us, what I can get access to, and then for what we can't get access to, that can always be an action at the end. Is that, did you know if that data was accessible?
Yeah, the hope was that you were going to go off and do that because we didn't want to do it, basically.
Well, we have most of it readily available. It's a matter of kind of compiling what is relevant to the chapter pieces.
Yeah, so as long as it's available, we can certainly include it and sift through it and figure out what is situated best for each of the documents.
Well, in terms of town property usage, I'm sure we do have that. In terms of like residential usage or private usage, so this is what I mean by this goes back quite some time, going back maybe 3 years. We were working, trying to get Eversource to disclose a lot of that information. Peter Nelson actually got some of that information initially. So our conversation, we initially thought that we were going to have a more fleshed out chapter and do all that research ourselves. And then the conversation turned to, well, we have these wonderful people doing this, so it's kind of like, just throw it all in a document and here you go.
Yeah.
So I apologize for
No, that is exactly my job.
Okay.
Data collection is what I'm here to do.
But also the things that might fit better into the transition plan is, we were just like, just put it all in there.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad to have that all and help sort of navigate with you all what's best for each sort of document. And also I've written here, depending on the development of this transition plan document, we can always adopt that as an appendix to this master plan chapter as well. So if anyone wants to have a deeper data dive or figure out more information, it'll all be there.
And I think one other thing, like when we started this process, we hoped that we would become part of community power. But we didn't know that, that wasn't for sure or it hadn't kicked off. And so now it has. So I would think that kind of changes our equation a little bit too on how we should be thinking about our energy plan as a master plan too. Because we know down the road, 3-4 years, that could have more impact on energy decisions within the town. Because it's in place now, so it's starting to move that plan forward. So I think that would be the other thing that we sort of need to, again, our draft was just, we didn't have all the information because we didn't know whether that was going to go through or not. So.
No, and I'll say your draft is certainly more information than I was expecting to come to. So
Oh, good.
I was expecting nothing to exist because you don't have a chapter adopted. So that's certainly very helpful for me as we go forward and continue to collect data. It gives me a good guide. So that is all good to know. And I have some sample chapters to show you in the next few slides from other communities in the state. And I know that Jaffrey is one of them access some of that residential data through Eversource. So I'm sure it's doable. It's just how much.
Oh, they're legally obligated to give it to us. They just are not very quick to agree to it.
Yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there. So yeah, we already talked about kind of what the date of this chapter or this document, and I'm wondering how this was kind of created and how the data was collected. Was it a collaborative effort among you all? Did you involve any other residents in town or community members or anyone I should know about? Reach out to?
So it really is kind of the first rough draft. The initial data was collected by Peter Nelson. We got more data, I think, through Joe from the town. And in terms of ideas and things, there were things that were discussed in our meetings, but we haven't had public input in any of our meetings, and we didn't advertise specifically any kind of public session for an energy chapter. So it really was just kind of like a more or less with extra steps. It was a brainstorming session with extra steps.
Okay, well that's great, and this gives us, like I said, a good guide to think about what we want to ask of the community, what pieces of this do we want their input on, so.
And Joe did a really good job of looking at other towns' energy chapters, so we did review those to help us to write.
Right.
If there are
So
any,
that was helpful to look at other towns. I think we did quite a bit of that.
yeah, and I apologize if I don't remember off the top of my head if that is in your citations in the document or references, but are there any off the top of your head, towns that you were looking
Rye.
at?
Rye and Lebanon, mainly. But there are others we looked at, but I think those are the two that had information that was really nice that we wrote about.
Great, well that is.
We changed it significantly, but yeah, we
So
started.
it was a
with it.
starting point for us.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah, so I've also put together some sample chapters here that we can take a look at. This first one, Littleton, what I really like about it is it's very concise, it's very visually attractive and clean. It has a good balance of photos and infographics, and I've kind of laid out the different sections that exist there, the benefits of energy planning. They talk about their energy conservation committee, energy conservation in general, transportation, and where their energy sources come from. And also at the end, it includes resources for residents, which I thought was a really nice touch. This is Jaffrey's. This is the layout you can see is more typical of the traditional master plan document. So a little bit less photos and images, more infographics. It's quite long at 21 pages, but it does have a very comprehensive sort of amount of information scaling from the state to the local level, which is great. And they talk about the state energy landscape, policy, they provide an energy profile of the town, and then they go into implementation actions at the end.
So, in my mind, the energy chapter should basically say, one of the things it should cover is, here's a snapshot of Newmarket today, and here's where we want to be. Here are the goals that we're setting. Do we actually have that, or are you planning that?
Yeah, I think that, and I'll say the reason that I've included these is just to give you an idea of what other towns in the state look like and what kinds of information, aside from what you've already compiled, you might want to take a look at, and how it's sort of structured, because all of that, the development of the chapter itself, the writing, and how we decide to structure it, that is something we'll continue to talk about together as we go forward. But we certainly plan to include that sort of data snapshot, where are we at, and then looking to the future in the next 10 years, what will Newmarket look like? And then towards the end, those goals and actions in sort of supporting resources like potential funding sources, timelines for each of the actions, responsible parties, and things like that.
So not just, not to go too far into the weeds, but just very briefly, because we talked about collecting data from Eversource, not just the current snapshot, but we really, I think, need to understand what the projected energy usage of the town is going to be in 5 to 10 years, because we have to do this transition plan as well. And so it's not just, yes, we know we want to take these actions, but the question is, are these actions going to be enough to get us to our goal? And in order to understand that, we have to understand not just where we're at right now, but how much our energy we're going to be using. Because on the one hand, we can look at like the trend that's existed in the last several years in terms of increases in energy usage, but also, and this is where when we first passed the 100% resolution, we were talking to other towns, what consultants they had hired to help them project, because there's going to be more EVs, there's going to be all kinds of different things that will increase energy usage or decrease energy usage. Will be more efficient technology in some areas, but we'll also be switching to electric stuff in general in other areas. So we really need, I think, professional help in determining how all these factors are going to lead to a projection.
Yeah, and I think that's something we can certainly get into as we go forward. And once we start really analyzing the actions that you've already laid out and digging more into those, then I think we'll be able to understand better what is it we're looking to do, and then kind of create that projection of how much energy consumption is the market going to see in the next 20 years.
Have any of the other towns that you've looked at also looked at potential energy that could be created within the town? So either potential solar ability, I also know the Department of Energy will actually give you an analysis for your town. They will actually tell you, based on rooftop location, how much solar energy could potentially be produced in your town. You have to be able to navigate the Department of Energy site to figure it out, but I know it's available.
And that's something that community power, I think, is going to be really helpful in helping us with, because they're not just procuring energy, but they offer the consultants to do town level generation projects. So we might all have to come together to talk about that. Yeah. But there were hints as to that effect in what we sent over.
Yeah, so I think this is a great start at thinking about experts that we might want to bring in for presentations, or that I may meet with on your behalf. So community power, and I'll certainly look into the Department of Energy projections for solar. And sorry, I didn't really answer your question, but yes, solar is definitely a big topic right now, and there are a couple of communities in the region who are adopting solar ordinances. There are some communities thinking about biomass and hydro. So it's definitely a discussion. It's just, I think everyone's kind of in the, is this feasible for our community phase right now?
Just throw out one of the things we're discussing in community power is solar arrays, but it doesn't have to be physically located in your town. Perhaps you can do one, a community one, where several towns buy into it or whatever, and it's shared. So.
Okay, great. So this next one is not an energy alone chapter, but this master plan itself, the Hanover master plan, is a really great example that we've been looking at for other chapters in your plan as well, as a sort of inspiration. They've called it their sustainability master plan, and they do have some sort of energy sections within the climate change chapter. But I just wanted to show kind of for a different example of how they have structured the chapter. It's sort of driven by the goals instead of having the goals at the end, which I thought was really interesting. And then they kind of go in more detail as to why that's a goal. And there's a really good balance of images in this one as well. And it's very clean and neat, so
just a good example to take a look
I
at.
found, and I understanding that a master plan is inherently a vision anyway, but I did find in looking at the other towns that it is a lot of, and it's sometimes quite lengthy, prose that kind of waxed philosophically about how,
Right.
it's really important to be sustainable, but really very little in the way of how do we get there?
Right.
Right? Just
Yeah.
like, and we'll do our best, kind of language rather than, and this is how we're going to do it. So I think that was a kind of a driving force for us, is that we wanted to be a lot more clear and tangible about how we wanted to get there instead of just kind of, the feel-good language.
Yeah, I think we're definitely on the same page about that. I think for the overall master plan update, the goal is to keep the chapters short, succinct, and very clear, and then have a very solid implementation plan for all of the chapter actions, and sort of kick you all off with that at the end of the project next summer.
Just to be clear,
Yeah.
one of the criticisms of the current master plan is like every chapter is in a different format, they cover different things, right?
Right.
And your goal is to make sure that all the chapters are basically the same type of format.
Yes.
And they cover the-
Yep.
okay.
They'll all be the same format, and we also have started, we haven't sort of released it to the public yet because we're still working on it, but we've put together an ArcHub site, if you're familiar with ArcGIS. It's basically a website where we can integrate maps and different sort of website-like elements. So at the end of this process, there will be both a print document, PDF, and there will also be the web version, hoping that that allows residents to be more interactive with it, and it'll actually be used by the wider community.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
so-
right now, asking a resident to go into the master plan.
Right, yeah.
Or anyone.
I
Not
think, yeah, I think I can speak for everyone when I say, like, the goal is to make this usable, like, user-friendly and very forward-facing
Speaking
document,
of, just
so-
to piggyback off of what Joe said, another thing about our master plan that I think we had all kind of collectively decided, and it was in the suggestions that we sent over, was the fact that we didn't have like a list of values like some of the other master plan, the town's master plans we had looked at. And we wanted to have that list of values up front
Yeah,
to say these are our driving values as a town as a whole. And as the Energy and Environment Committee, we wanted sustainability to be one of those values. It's kind of like self-serving for us to say we want a list of values because we want sustainability to be on the list. But
yeah, no, and I loved seeing that because that's something that town staff and SRPC have talked about, is including values or themes throughout the chapter, and some of the ones we've talked about are community resilience, age friendliness, and equity. And so these different ideas, and those have not been solidified yet, but it's great to have that as well as we think moving forward. What are the sort of guiding values for the community, and how can those shine through in each chapter? All right, so that's getting pretty much to the end of my presentation. I have our homework on the next slide, but I just wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask any more questions. As I said, the sort of plan moving forward is, right now we're in that data collection phase and establishing existing conditions together. I'm reviewing your document as well as sort of the information that you've talked about tonight, and I'll look into other state and regional guiding documents. And then we'll think about, at our next meeting, what experts do we want to bring in to either discuss at one of your meetings, or for me to kind of go out and liaise with as we develop the chapter. And then we'll start getting into chapter writing in a few months, and we'll have an opportunity to engage the community with another survey as the summer starts up. And then we can all kind of think about what questions are most important to ask your fellow residents.
I have one more thing to talk about.
Yeah.
While everybody's here. So our charge for this committee is not only energy, but it's energy and transportation. It specifically says we're supposed to recommend best practices for facilities of operations, fuel vehicles, and transportation. Okay. Now, the transportation, they're taken out as a whole separate chapter, correct?
Correct, yes.
Is everybody okay with that?
Sure, we included a lot of transportation, like at least the beginnings of suggestions
Yeah.
in what we sent over, but if you all want to divide it out, I'm okay with it personally.
Yeah, and so that chapter, I believe, will be starting in April, and you'll get to talk with our transportation planner, Colin. He's great, so knowledgeable. So it's good to know that that is part of your charge, and I did add you all in my little list here to the transportation chapter, sort of list of partners and experts. So yeah, I'll make sure to bring that into conversation and ensure that you all are included as that chapter starts.
And I just want to add, we
Kicked off.
do have another one of the town councilors here tonight, and one of the things we're going to be talking about is transportation, just, you know.
Yeah, I'm planning to stick around for that, so.
Awesome.
I also want to add a couple things there.
Yes.
On that, so this Team 4, the chapters that Team 4 of the subcommittee is working on are energy, transportation, community facilities, and utilities. So those 3 chapters are going to have involvement and participation from those same community members that are going to be able to see where they overlap, ensure that we're getting information from all the right
Yeah.
experts, subcommittees, and all of that kind of stuff. So just so that you know too, there will be some consistency with who's involved in those 3 chapters, since they do kind of all relate.
All right.
And on the visioning note, in developing those like guiding values for the town in general, Autumn mentioned the workshop that's coming up on March 16th. That is a great opportunity to get involved. If any of you can participate and be present for that to provide input, feedback, please show up.
Yeah.
March
Okay.
16th?
Yep.
Yes, we've sent, I'm not sure if the
March
town has
16th.
publicized the registration link yet.
I'm not sure.
I know Bart's been sick, so.
Yeah.
Do you all utilize like Google Calendar or something? If you
Yeah.
don't mind sending our committee like an invite.
Yeah.
So that it's on everybody's,
I-
for
I've
those
been
who
in-
sync up with Google Calendar, it's on our.
Yeah,
calendar.
so we have
was sent
an
out,
event
that one.
registration, and
Yeah,
you should
I
be able
do
to
have it,
download it
8
for
o'clock, 8 o'clock.
whatever calendar you use.
March 16th, 8 a.m.
I don't think I got anything, and I also didn't get the survey that you were mentioning before for the town. I just presumed I would as a resident. So I don't know if I'm getting like communication problems or what.
I think actually I found both those on Facebook. They were both.
I don't do Facebook.
They
Okay.
were
It
sent
was
out
also
in
in the
the
newsletter.
yeah.
There were a lot of postings in the town newsletter with the QR and the link, and in a lot of the local businesses out and about. I don't think there were any like hard copy, like handout versions
No,
of it. but-
no, I just would expect, as committees, that maybe we might get like something specific, but, yeah.
Yeah, and it's good to think about moving forward, ensuring that all the committees have that
it's fine.
information.
Will
fine.
will this committee be invited to the meetings with this Team 4? Or will anybody from our committee be at this meeting? I know Lindsay's been at some of our meetings. I just thought I'd ask.
Yes.
Well, yeah, if you want to appoint somebody to be part of the subcommittee and be on Team 4, you by all means should do so.
I don't want to
Aside
speak
from
for us,
me.
but I would
Aside from me.
recommend that we do that strongly because this group spent a lot of time on those 2 chapters and
Would you like to do it?
I'll do it if no one else will do it, but I just want to make sure somebody does it because I just think that we want that work to be represented with this group.
I agree wholeheartedly with that statement. I'm also in the category of I'll do it if no one else does it.
When do these meetings usually occur?
We can tag team.
They haven't been set yet.
Okay.
We're trying to nail down a kickoff. We were supposed to try to do that this morning, but between illnesses and vacations, that hasn't happened yet. So now is a great time to designate a person to start getting on the communications to nail down our kickoff meeting.
Okay, well, I guess unless someone else wants to do it, I will do it. So add me to the list.
Okay. Do we need a vote for that?
Oh, well, like I said, if someone else wants to do it, I'm happy to.
The chair appoints, if that's allowed, Patrick Reynolds to, as our delegate to the Team 4 membership group, to represent the position of the EE committee. You are our representative. Godspeed.
Okay.
Well, this is great, yeah, and that will certainly help to continue to ensure that sort of consistency between those 3 chapters, having a member of your group on that team. So that's great.
And if there's any questions, then just let us know.
I will.
So, we got a couple items for homework that I'd like for us to work on together. If you'd like to take a look at the chapters that I've included in this presentation, they'll have links to the different chapters. And also thinking about Lebanon and Rye, identifying what out of these chapters do you really like, and if there's any elements of these different examples that you want to add to your draft. And then on that same line, thinking about which elements of your draft may be better suited in the energy transition plan, or perhaps, like I said, moved into the appendix, and what you want to be in that, succinct short chapter.
We did look at other things, and I like what we ultimately came up with. We went around a lot, but I think we sort of have already what we would like to see in the energy chapter.
Okay.
Along with, what are the recommendations that you have,
Okay. If you feel confident in that, and you want to leave the rest of the suggestions in between now and the next meeting to me, I'm happy
Well, I
to
do
do that.
feel the towns that we drew from, like I said, I felt when we went over it as a group, and also when I was going over it privately, it was a bit confusing because it was a lot of repetition. A lot of their segments were, again, with the feel-good language, but no hard, concrete things. So what we liked, I think, and please anybody speak up if I'm not speaking for you all, is the clean, outline format where so we sectioned it off, and I worked really hard to put the different thoughts from other towns into the right section. And then I really like what we have. We have the snapshot section, and this is where we're at. Well, we have the vision, and this is our resolution, and these are our goals, and then this is where we're at, and here are the actions. What I will say is that some of the going into more minutia details about those actions could be put into an appendix that would resemble what we would call the transition plan. So I think it's great to have, so we had the vision, or the what was it, the goals, or the 100% renewable, this is our goal, and then we had the snapshot, and then we're and this is how we're going to get there, but we don't have to go into as much detail if that makes more sense to put the details into the appendix.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, we discussed that.
I would like it to be shorter and cleaner, because I think it was 17 pages we sent you, or something like that.
Yeah, and I think the goal is to keep most of the chapters to about 10 pages at max.
Okay.
All right, so that makes sense. And then I guess number 3 then is really what experts do we want to engage in the process. So I know I've already talked about Community Power Coalition, and thinking about the Department of Energy, and perhaps there are some folks from the state.
Clean Energy New Hampshire has been really helpful. Again, I don't exactly know who to go to. I suppose the Department of Energy might be the right people, but in terms of, certainly CPC&H would know, they may not be the right ones, but they would probably know who we should go to to get the projections, not just the snapshot, the current snapshot, but where are we going to be with energy usage? And who are the really, really smart people that know that, how to determine that?
Yes.
Because there's supposedly Toyota's coming out with a solid state battery in 3 years that gets 700 miles to a charge and takes 15 minutes to charge.
In New England?
Well, Again, we need the smart people,
Yeah.
and I don't know who they
Yes.
are.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to continue to think about these things, and I will go to the next page. That is my email right there, and I also have my business cards I can hand out if you'd like. And then below that, Angela Cleveland is my colleague who's also helping manage the master plan update process. So I just want you to know my email is always open to you. If you have a thought that comes into your head, a question, a concern, please always feel free to reach out. And I will take all of this information I've gathered from you tonight and start planning our next meeting and some
Is there any chance
materials
you
for
can
you.
send us your slideshow to the
Yes.
town
Yeah.
email, the committee email?
I
Yeah.
can do that.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
And
so
that way
Lindsay
we
will
would
send
have
you
her
that.
email address.
Yep.
Lindsay will send you that, and then I will send you all the registration link and information for the March 16th workshop as well.
Perfect, thank you so much. I speak for the committee to say we really, really appreciate this.
I appreciate you all, and I'm very excited.
And, one other thing, Autumn.
Sure.
Yeah, you mentioned any other experts. If you hear about any other experts that any other towns use that you think would be good,
Yeah,
that would be great too. I mean, there might be somebody that Hanover used or one of these other towns. And if they, because again, what we don't know, we don't know.
Right.
Yeah, it's like, we're looking for you guys to help us find the resources.
yeah. So I'll come prepared to the next meeting with this sort of list of folks to engage those experts in the community.
That's good.
All right, thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, we have I'm a little confused by the next point on the agenda because it's kind of like a combination of all the points. Do we have an update on community power, or is that a remnant from another?
Yeah, let me just do a quick 2-minute update on community power for everybody here, and then we'll get to some.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so if you recall, we had, end of January, we had our public information session for community power, for launching community power. There were 4,171 people that were defaulted into community power. 5 people opted in.
Oh,
9
nice.
people opted out. So the opt-outs are less than, 0.2%.
Awesome.
Okay. Where community power stands right now is, as of the end of December, so they went live in May, roughly April of last year. As of December, they had $43 million, 43.5 million in revenues. Costs were 37.8 million, so they had 5.5 million that went into reserves so far.
Do we know what the goal is for the reserves to be filled?
It-
It depends on how many towns have joined.
Well, you have a bunch of new towns coming in now, but plus the cost or whatever, but they're projecting in between 3 to 5 years that they will have enough reserves where they can go 6 months without any income and still run the company. And after that point in time, then they start distributing the reserves
Okay.
to either put into projects that benefit communities, whatever.
And those have to be specifically energy-related projects, or just anything?
They could be anything
Okay.
technically, but, what they do has to be decided.
Okay.
Just 2 other things I want to make. Had people gone with Eversource or whatever, they would have spent $9 million more with the other than what they did with community power. So when you take that $9 million into account, plus the $5 million that have gone to reserves, that ultimately benefit the communities, it's roughly $14 million from April to December that community benefit. So
That's great.
they hope to get more information in the next month or so here as we go along. And I think it's our responsibility to monitor the program and report back to the town council and the town manager.
I agree. We are, after all, just for the reminder that we are also the Energy or Electric Aggregation Committee as well. We are not just the EE, we are the EAC. So thank you very much for that update. It makes me wonder what was going on in the heads of the 9 people who opted out, but it's all good news. Thank
But
you.
it could be net meter people.
Oh, that's true, net metering, I forgot. Counselor Sonke, you're here to give us an update on the discussion about transportation with Coast Radnicals. Thank you very much for coming.
Sure. I'm not sure it's so much of an update as it is just an opportunity to talk about my desire to work on improving transportation options for residents in the town and to connect Newmarket to the remainder of the region so that we can fully benefit from the transit system that exists. As you all know, or may know, we currently only have a reservation-only option that Coast offers. The former Route 7 was transformed from the already hard-to-use fixed route to a reservation-only system, so you have to call ahead if you need a ride, and they will provide the ride to you somewhere along the old Route 7 between here and Exeter, no longer going into Portsmouth. Now, for most of us, that's, for some of us that may be really important, maybe the only way that we can get to go shopping or see the doctor or what have you. But as a real alternative to a car or to reduce car use in households, that's obviously not going to go anywhere. And right now, we don't know really where we want to be as far as transportation is concerned as a town. How are we going to get around in 10, 15 years? So my intention for having Coast come in is to, one, begin a conversation at the town level about what we're getting out of Coast and what we might get out of it if we were to engage a little bit more. So that's the public transit side. But the larger piece is, for me, where are we going to go? Where would we want transit to occur? On which corridors in town, and what do we want to connect? So that's a conversation. I think that's obviously that's a master plan conversation in some way as well. But it's a really far vision because these things take time. One of the pieces that I find noteworthy is the physical infrastructure that exists on Route 108 that was created as part of the restructuring of 108 when curb cuts and bus pull-offs were included, and now of course we don't have a public transit line anymore because Wildcat chose to close Route 5. To me, that's a sign of a lack of cohesion as far as planning, how money is getting spent, who makes decisions about these kinds of things. If it had been up to the towns, or town residents, I'm sure people would have said, well, no, this makes sense. We should have a bus between Durham and Newmarket. Why shouldn't we? But we didn't get to make that choice. The choice to include bus pull-offs was made at a time when there was transit, the money was spent, but there was no connectivity to a town vision or to the town coffers even to support the use of that infrastructure. So I would like to include in the conversation, if at all possible, a vision that connects physical infrastructure, what we want the town to look like, and how we are going to use it. Because you can't have transportation without infrastructure, and you can't have infrastructure without people to use it. People have to get there somehow. And of course, if we want to really truly be reducing our energy usage per capita, traveling together is a much more efficient way. No matter how efficient the car is, you're still going to be much less impactful from an energy perspective if you are traveling in a congregate environment. So Coast and the conversation there was a start off. And what we learned is that essentially there are two options that the town would have if we were to engage with Coast and pursue a different arrangement. They basically showed us, based on kind of previously stated objectives to reconnect with the Coast system, 4 options as to how that might be accomplished. Connecting through Durham to Dover so that town residents could travel further into Portsmouth through Durham, all the way up to Rochester, into Berwick, which is all possible if you are actually connected to the system. And the 4 options were a route to Lee, to the traffic circle there, to go to the market basket, a simple public fixed route to Durham, and a fixed route through Durham to Dover, a fixed route through Durham to Lee, a route through on 152 to Lee, and circular back through Durham to Newmarket. So different options. All in all, a fixed route would require an immense financial commitment by the town, which is in short kind of an absurd proposition. There's no way that we're going to commit $359,000 for a fixed route to travel between here and Durham on our own. What we learned is that, as with all federal funding, money is finite, the amount is finite, and the amount is spoken for. And if we were to come online, or if we were to pursue a fixed route, there would be no. Okay. Does everybody know how public transit is funded in general? There's a whole bunch of money that the state gets through the New Hampshire DOT or directly to public transit providers, depending on the type of public transit provider that they are. But in essence, the state is allocated a certain amount of money, and that is then divvied up among transit providers, and the transit providers use it to support their routes. The local match, or the match, there's a local match required, which in Coast's case is generated mostly through the contributions from member communities. There's a small revenue from fare box collections, but mostly it's whatever towns are committing to create the match to access those federal funds. And those federal funds are all being used in the current system. So if we were to come and say, oh, we would like a line as well, there didn't seem to be any. Even though it's a cooperative, there didn't seem to be any willingness to consider, reallocating those funds so that they're shared. We would basically be left to hold the bag and pay for everything, which seems a little. So there's some discussion necessary there in order to make something happen.
Even though we were already getting our share of those federal funds when they were servicing us as a fixed route, and Wildcat as well. So, so just for full disclosure, I've worked for both Wildcat and Coast.
Yeah.
So I was one of the people filling out the on-off counts of passengers, and Coast went through in 2019 very extensive survey process. I don't know if Rad brought this up or not, my former boss, whereby they went and did a whole bunch of public hearings and surveys. Where do people want to go? When do they need to get there in order to form their entire route system. And Newmarket just never really had a lot of ridership, unfortunately, which I am very sad about, because when I first moved to Newmarket 15 years ago, I was one of the students going to UNH,
Yeah.
and I would be stuck here at the Irving, having to get a mile north on 108, and there was a time where I had a backpack walking up 108, and a car hit my backpack and threw me to the ground, because the margins on 108 north of town are quite
Right.
narrow there. So I always really wanted good public transit, but the point is that they have that survey data. I'm wondering if we could use that, and I didn't mean to detract from what you were saying, but the point is, we used to have our share of those funds because we had those fixed routes.
Right.
They've taken that away and given it to,
Right, they're gone, and, and Route 7 was, truncated and then, basically eliminated, and Route 5 never, we never really, because it's a university system, it was it's funded directly to the university, and different story. Although, if we go back, of course, the coast system, it used to include the university. The university was one of the drivers to create coast in the first place, and the reason it is Route 5, or was Route 5, is because there used to be one system.
right.
So I think we as a town need to figure out how to interact with coast in a way that gets us linked into the system again, if we so choose. I don't think that a fixed route is a really feasible option for us, so we will need to start somewhere else. But I think this is probably not quite where the conversation here should go. I think the reason I was interested in coming here is because I think there's a lot of gain to be had in changing the way we get around, and making that possible requires that to be an attractive proposition. And one of the reasons people travel is, of course, to go to work. One of the reasons is to go shopping. One of the reasons, and going to work every day, that's a very difficult. I think it's a very difficult change or it's very difficult to create a choice for people that is attractive enough to say, okay, I'm going to leave my car, because you have to, so the threshold there is very high to get there. But if you think about recreational opportunities, so one of the things that the town is always thinking about is where do people go? Why do people want to come here to the region, to the town? And I think recreation is one of those aspects. And if you think about, I think about bicycling because people bike a lot and people use the trails, the Rockingham Rail Trail and so forth. And I think there's real opportunity in creating a transportation option that would allow people to more easily utilize those trails, and go a little bit farther afield, or have a one-way ride and then take a bus back, or the other way around, what have you, or take a ride, find yourself in Exeter and have a ride back to Newmarket. That would be something that could be offered only on weekends, rather than going fixed route, Monday through Friday, maybe a Saturday service too, and it's just not going to happen as a first step. A first step would have to be something much more lower-hanging fruit, and I think a recreational or a shopping shuttle that's offered 2 days a week, that anybody can sign up for, Newmarket residents, that we operate ourselves rather than having Coast operated. So there are different ways to do that, and it would be lovely to have a committee that is interested in, or a few people that are interested in having those conversations and developing a proposal that can be brought to the town council. And the town council decided, rather than, even though Joe courageously stepped forward and offered this committee as a place to have that conversation.
Thank you, Joe.
The town council suggested that, or decided that an ad hoc committee made up of representatives from different groups would be a better place to have that conversation.
So we've had a couple conversations on transportation because it's germane to what we do, but also because we were giving our recommendation for the energy chapter, which inherently, we do energy and environment, and transportation covers both of those things. And did you see anything that we had suggested did you see? So I thought that we had some pretty interesting ideas. So one of the huge barriers for transit is CDL drivers. And CDL drivers are going at a premium right now. They're far too few. I happen to be one of them. But 15 passenger vans or smaller don't need a CDL driver.
Right.
And at that point, you can hire pretty much anyone with a good driving record to drive those vehicles. And I can tell you, both working for Wildcat, doing Route 5, and back when Route 5 existed, and doing Route 7 with Coast, I don't think I ever had 15 passengers on that bus, which really defeats the environmental aspect of the bus when you have a 35 passenger or a 45 passenger bus and you only have 5 people on it, because those things get hopefully 5 miles a gallon, and oftentimes not that good. So one of the things we talked about was the potential of creating essentially like a town Uber system that would essentially anyone could access, but would have a sliding scale or be subsidized for transportation or low-income transportation challenged people. And that would provide you more of the door-to-door needs. One of the other, I think, and I was there when they were doing the planning, one of the things that happened that I think negatively impacted Route 7 was the fact that Stratham had been a major contributor to Coast for the Route 7, because it used to go all the way to Stratham and Exeter and everything, and Stratham, being a very wealthy community, pulled out. They were like, we're not using this. It's bringing people to come and shop at our shops. And certainly I think everybody here, just like we want people to be able to access Durham and Dover, most people go shopping in Stratham here. So when Stratham pulled out, they pulled all of their stops in Stratham with the exception of the one Market Basket stop to drop people off. And having no more stops in Stratham, I think negatively impacted, why even have 7 at that point if you're not going to actually take people north. So anyway, going back to the idea, I thought it was a really neat idea that this committee had come up with, because it's, I think, feasible. And we invited Carol Gulla to come speak to us, and she operates something pretty similar, volunteer-wise. So that's just food for thought for future conversations.
Right.
I'm happy for other people to chime in.
Speaking of small, I think one thing we did not address, I'm a big fan of carpooling, but oh my gosh, it's hard to get people to do it.
Mm.
Do you have any ideas about how to incentivize carpooling?
Not really,
The-
no.
You're not much more optimistic.
Problem is,
than
people
that.
need to be going to the same place at the same time, and it's really hard in today's world to get people's schedules to
Yeah,
coordinate like
I
that.
do with friends all the time, going into the forest, oh, okay, drop me off here and pick me up an hour later, no, I'll pick you up 2 hours later, okay. But maybe if there was just some way to encourage people to do that.
There's people for whom that might work, but I think a lot of times people who do have very busy working lives and family lives, and maybe, in their 30s and 40s or what have you, it gets pretty difficult at that time to do that. I mean, it's another thing is, on the other hand, the problem with public transportation is unless you really invest in it up front, which is a super big price tag, it takes 3 times the amount of time to go anywhere. When I'm driving people from Rochester to Portsmouth to commute to their job, that's maybe a 30-minute drive, 45-minute drive in the car. It takes 3 hours because I got to stop everywhere, and I'm a bus and I go slow. So it's not efficient, and these are the things that I think having that kind of maybe Uber type system or a 15-passenger van system might be better at solving.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are different reasons why people need transportation or would want it, and we can certainly do better than a fixed route to develop kind of custom solutions that are more cost effective than a fixed route, whether that's a shopping shuttle or, for example, I mean, I appreciate the stops between here and Exeter, but like who are we trying to reach, and who are we trying to get onto the bus has to be really the first question. And a fixed route, you know, that works in an urban environment really well because the distances are much shorter. But for us here, that may not be the way to go. I mean, maybe an Uber system or something to that effect, a municipally run system like that, or a shopping shuttle that, you know, is offered once or twice a week on a regular basis with 5 runs during the day. So if you miss the ride back, you don't have to worry because there's another one in an hour later. So you don't have to worry about getting through the cash register line that quickly and can relax a little bit. But there's also, I think, a lack of experience with transportation that we have to contend with. So creating opportunities for people to experience public transportation outside of a school bus, which, you know, most of us have experience, and that is transportation, and that is public transportation, might be a way to develop more of a willingness to try it again. So creating a positive experience for a positive reason, I think, is really critical.
Education, outreach, campaign.
Yeah, or truly creating an opportunity to try out a bus line.
Right.
You know, and just run it for a short time. Maybe something as crazy as going from downtown Newmarket to Newfields to Exeter and back.
Right.
I know it sounds like, who wants to go to Newfields? But depends on what you can do there, what you would want to do there. And connecting downtowns might be something that businesses are interested in as well.
So down Exeter has occasionally different like downtown events. I'm thinking of the UFO Fest in the
Yeah.
summer or what have you.
Yeah.
And so if I'm envisioning right now, and of course this is just off the cuff, but if we have like this Uber system for like the more customized stuff, but then we also have like, even if the town just buys one 15-passenger van, does a fun wrap on it, like something really distinctive, really eye-catching, and then the day of the UFO Fest or whatever, we just offer free shuttles down to Exeter all day long and back, just so that people kind of get, or whatever fest. I don't know what fest you want to do. The point is, like, have an event at the end of the line that we can like give people a fun, free opportunity to kind of experience taking the shuttle and realize it's really not a big barrier to do.
Yeah, well, there's some, you know, we're taciturn New Englanders, but having sailed a lot in the small places in South American and Central American countries, people there love to ride on the van, which may hold 12 people, and have conversations. I mean, it's one of the social focal points of the week is riding that van into town to get groceries and so forth. I always loved it. And that's one of the advantages of public transportation.
Exactly right.
Another.
On the ride, people can.
It's fine. Patrick, you had your hand up?
Yeah, well, I think you could also try with 2 targeted groups. So one of them is the senior group, right? Because they have limitations around driving.
Yep.
So they might have interest in having a specialty vehicle at precise times, taking them point A to point B and then back. The other group is actually the 16 to 18-year-old group who want that independence. They don't actually want to be driven around by their parents anymore, but they may not have access to a car. And that's the type of group that you could possibly offer something on a Saturday that goes to the mall and comes back a few times if you've got, again, like the idea is you're introducing to them
Yes.
the idea of public transportation as a way for independence and, you know, kind of trying on adulting a little bit for that group. You might get some kids that want to do that because they do like to go places and they can't unless they're driven there by their parents.
I would add to those groups the lower income communities within Newmarket, and specifically the mobile home, manufactured home communities, because there has not been any fixed route that has gone anywhere near either one of those communities, and many of them are transportationally challenged.
Yep.
And then something that was serviced by fixed route would be Cherry Hill, those apartments, and then a lot of students there, and then also the Leda Lane apartments going out of town.
Just a couple of things, the takeaways that I got from that meeting is, one was the next step, really the first step is really an updated survey is required just to see, you know, are we trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist? But I think it does exist, but.
There are
yeah,
transportationally challenged people, but I don't think that I think they're disparate. I don't think they think that they have any options.
Right now.
And they don't. And in fact, they don't.
We definitely need an updated survey. The second thing was there was discussion about, okay, sharing the cost with Exeter, Stratham, and Durham, and there's absolutely no incentive for Exeter, Stratham, or Durham to be part of anything. The best option of the four options that they looked at appeared to be something from Newmarket up to Dover, Coast and Dover. You know, from Coast and Dover, then they can go other places. That appeared to be the best specific route.
Well, of working with Coast, I totally see going through Durham to Dover as the best option, but that also doesn't take anybody up to Stratham, which is where most people shop.
Right, but it's, again,
So, I mean, does it surprise me that Coast is suggesting the route that leads us to Dover, which is their main hub for all their routes, you know?
Well, one of the objectives was to be able to connect to, you know, other routes so that you can travel further afield than the one route would allow you to. But I think that's good feedback, and I appreciate that age group that you mentioned. I had that very same thought. I did mention it to my daughter, who happens to be 16, and she thought that was hilarious, and that they would much rather prefer to be driven by friends than, you know, take a bus. But that's just her, and
No, I
who
think
knows?
you're right. It's just not always available.
Well, I was thinking
to
that they don't
them.
go to the mall anymore, but, you know, maybe the beach during the summer, I don't know.
No, I think, I think going to Exeter or to Dover, whatever, that would be or to Portsmouth, that would be the place to go, rather than the mall, I agreed, but I think there is something there, for sure, but again, that's a targeted population, and a targeted solution would be and you could use the same vehicles too. It's not like you have to have, you know, multiple vehicles. for
And they
these
don't
kind
have
of
to be
things.
large. Patrick, did I
Right.
cut you off?
Well, the only other thing that I'm thinking, which is frustrating to me, is Amtrak goes right through our town. It goes right through our town, and we have
No
no
access.
access to it. It's like we're paying all the costs and getting none of the benefit.
The 3
Like,
a.m.
We get
horn.
the alarm going off when it goes through town at 5 a.m. in the morning,
I always hear it at 3.
whenever. It's like, that to me is kind of a
Yeah,
little bit outrageous that we don't even get a connector route to either Exeter or Durham so that people from here could actually ride that train to Boston without having to drive to park at one of those two places, which don't even have a lot of parking to begin with, because they're trying to encourage their people to walk to the train, right? Which makes sense, but again, so that would be one thing that I would say, yeah, it would be nice if there was a way we could reconnect.
Whatever happened to our train station?
Joe,
Yeah.
was your hand up?
I'll just, to move forward here a little bit, what's the next steps, okay? Stuff we're talking about ultimately makes it into the master plan, or the master plan has to take some of this into account. I know the next step, or one of the things is there's going to be another committee that's going to be formed, but I think we have to ride herd on Steve and others to get that going.
Now that they're not serving Newmarket, I guess they are with the reservation system. So I guess Steve is still on their board, I suppose.
I
It's
represent
ex
the town.
officio. Oh, you do? Okay, all right, okay. So my question, I do want whoever, whether it's the ad hoc committee or whoever, to request of Coast to get that study data, because they spent like a whole year doing tons of public hearings and sending out surveys, and Newmarket was part of that. So I would love to see if they would be willing to share that data as it relates to Newmarket, because, I mean, they may not be willing to share, but it would be great information for us to have, because if you want to know about usage and what the town wants, that would be a great place to start.
Yeah.
Not to say that we can't do our own surveys.
No, I think it's good to have, existing data sets, even if they're a few years old, and then add to them with a new survey,
Okay.
for sure.
Any other questions of Councilor Stuckey?
Anybody here who would want to serve on the ad hoc committee? I know, another committee to serve on, just what you wanted.
Right. When is this supposedly starting?
We don't know that yet, but it will be soon.
You can put me as a maybe, only because transportation is something I have a lot of experience in. So I'm interested, but I am also, as everybody is, stretched thin.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. It seems that priorities among all organizations are, one, finding transportation for people who currently don't have it and need it.
Yeah.
And then two, luring people who do drive cars and using some form of public transportation.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Two distinct populations.
I agree. And that kind of, the second population is kind of what you were talking about in terms of like, well, people who might want to bike the trails but don't necessarily have the energy to come all the way back,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah, or who don't want to ride their bike after they've had 2 beers.
Right. Indeed.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Please
John
keep
Keith.
us in the loop.
I will.
All right. Do we have,
The only other thing I would just add is, I don't know, I have a feeling this is going to take a while to get everything going, whatever, and it's probably not going to meet the timeframes that's needed for the master plan.
I think it will certainly be incorporated in the master plan. I've already taken some notes on when we're developing the survey, who needs to provide some input in survey questions.
See what
And
they stand.
Coast mentioned that they had some survey questions that they've used that they can share with us. So we can incorporate those when we're putting together our surveys for the various chapters and getting on those topics. And then we can kind of tailor some of those specifically for ourselves to better understand how people would be using it. So
Michael
think it'll
did share
work well in the process.
some questions already, so I can forward those to you if you
Yeah,
like.
Please do.
Yeah,
Definitely myself and Bart.
okay. Yeah, will do. And I think that there is the difference between, the service and the actual, makeup of the town. What does the town look like? How can you get around in the town? Can you get from A to B on a bike safely or walk? That's all transportation as well. And I think to me, that's master plan. The service piece I'm not sure that a master plan can go beyond, we'd like that to be there.
Right.
But
And
anyway.
then the master plan, a lot of the community outreach efforts have some element of analyzing the demographics and trying to reach all different types of groups. So with that, trying to get input from particular groups and settings, when we're advertising you and you get the notice about the previous one, having more information about how can we reach out to those specific groups and having contacts with potential riders and all of that kind of stuff will be important to incorporate as we're putting that survey together and putting it out, advertising for it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
okay. Other business, oh, yeah, come on.
I just want to mention in part of this conversation, the Stratford Regional Planning is also a metropolitan planning organization. So we have regional plans, our 10-year plan that we update, which allows you to provide projects to us, and then we put them in the plan, and then that allows you to access more federal funding. So like, this is very much part of the conversation with not only the master plan, but the services that we provide to you as a dues-paying community. So definitely consider keeping us in the loop in this
Awesome.
conversation.
Excellent, good to know. Any other business? Seeing none. Our next meeting will be the last Wednesday of March, Living Life in the Future, which is the 27th. And if no one has any further information to add, then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much for coming.